Live from a bunker in the heart of the Ozarks, a podcast that's probably just going to work from bed today. It's Sif Pop. Welcome to Sif Pop Weekly, streaming live most weekends or available to download later in your podcast feed, unless, of course, you're a patron.
Patrons get perks!
Patrons get those perks.
It's Kelvin Kranz.
I'm your host, Aaron Dicer, and if they gave the Footling Prize for podcasting, I'd nominate him in a heartbeat. It's Andrew Ormsby.
I don't fly.
Each week we'll chat about movies and television and whatever else from the pop culture universe is on our minds. And please welcome our guest returning this week. He's welcome on our Queen Mary anytime. It's Jon Paula. Welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be here. I would cruise with you gentlemen anytime.
Yeah.
Hey.
I can
It's
just
a
see
ship, not a cruise.
Technically, it's a crossing.
Crossing.
It is a crossing. That is absolutely correct. We're going to have a good time today. We're going to talk about Let Them Talk, which is the new Steven Soderbergh, or Let Them All Talk, I should say, the new Steven Soderbergh movie that is available streaming on HBOMax. We're also going to talk about one of the small acts films that Steve McQueen is putting out on Amazon Prime, which is kind of a television show, but also really just
it's like
5
an
movies.
Anthology miniseries.
Yeah. So
It's just a movie.
it really is. It is.
5 movies.
We're going to talk about Mangrove. And honestly, of the conversations that are becoming tiresome in pop culture, what is a movie and what is a TV show is probably getting there pretty quickly. At some point, all of us just kind of have to throw up our hands and go, it's content, right? It's storytelling. Do we have to define it?
The only thing that matters to me is whether or not I can log it on Letterboxd when I'm finished. That's the definitive. Is it a film or a TV show?
Yeah.
And I was able to log this, so I'm okay with it.
Of course. Yes, Jon is a fellow YouTube movie critic with a gold play button.
3 silvers, actually.
3 silver play buttons. I knew you had one back there. And also an incredible Letterboxd follow, which I do want to start off at the beginning and pick a bone or two with you about your big list. All right, so
sure.
You ready for this?
Yeah.
I have not prepped you for this at all. So
no, please lay it on me.
We ask the hard-hitting questions here on Sif Pop. So I perused your best of all time list, which isn't, I should specify, isn't technically your best of all time list. It's a mathematical algorithmic equation based on...
It's an aggregate of everyone else's opinion. Letterboxd and Roger Ebert and the Palme d'Or winners and Best Picture winners. It's everything.
And you update it annually, and you just did the update for this year, and it is a beautiful list. Let me just say that right off the top. I love it. Do you go up to 1,000?
My Excel sheet includes every unique entry, and there's like 3,700 films on it. And then I just trim that to the top 1,000. But you have to make at least 2 lists to make that cutoff.
Okay.
I sort of build the math in such a way that if you only show on one list, you don't make it. You don't have enough
that
points.
makes this question even more interesting for me. How is Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and Transformers on this list of best movies of all time?
Because
what list do those make?
It includes the box office totals, and I weighted heavily for that so that the list wasn't just artsy foreign films. I wanted to include some mainstream.
That's fine.
Movies. Because I think, and I've said this before on the show, all movies have value, even the Crystal Skull. And the fact that it made like $900 million is, to me, important and worth including on some of these lists, even if it's the bottom, even if it's in like the 900s or it just misses the mark. If you go back to that list, Aaron, on Letterboxd, there's a link in there to view the Google Sheets version, and that includes tabs that basically stipulate where each list came from. So Godfather was number 1 in Letterboxd, but number 5 on They Shoot Pictures, Don't They? It was number 3 on AFI. So you can go right across each row and find out, okay, why is this here? And what rank did it get on each respective list, which is, for a math nerd like me, very exciting.
Oh, yeah.
So
no,
what
I
I'm
love it.
hearing is that Aaron and I need to send you our letterbox of our top 100 movies of all time list so you can add that to the calibration.
Yeah,
I absolutely could.
And then obviously that's, weighted twice as much as anything else, and we understand
Yeah,
that.
that's
just
why
a
I'm
part of
bringing it
being
up.
who we are.
Yeah.
But yeah,
The
no,
Synth Pop metric would carry a lot of weight.
it would. It should. Absolutely should. I really genuinely love the list, and the work that goes into it is kind of astonishing to me, and I appreciate it. I know there's a lot of Excel and that kind of stuff that can simplify, obviously, the math and such.
Oh, it definitely took a lot of work.
Yeah, no, I can
I've
see
gotten
it.
quicker at it, and I figured out how to do like row duplication and stuff like that, where you can automatically pair 5 rows together if they have the same value. But it took a lot of work to build it and make it easy to digest and present it in a way that I thought was useful for me. But Crystal Skull is number 995, so it just barely.
But it's there, man. And when I saw it, I was like, okay.
Well, whenever you add my list on there, it's gonna get bumped up a little bit. Just it's gonna at least be in the 400s.
I often say, when you complain about a list, you can't just say this doesn't belong here or why isn't this here. You have to say what belongs here instead. Right. Or, what would you replace this with? Because that really is the equation, right? I can't just look at it and go, Crystal Skull shouldn't be in the top 1,000 movies. I need to say, here's a movie that's not in the top 1,000 movies that should replace it. And I haven't done the work to do that, so it's just
an obvious replacement. I'm looking at it just now. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is like 20 entries below it, so it missed the list. But that shows up on 4 different publications. But it ranked lower on all 4 than Crystal Skull did on its 2.
Yeah.
So it just missed by whatever it is, like 30 points or so. And I don't know, looking at the two movies, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is probably the better movie.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's safe to say. But you know what we're doing? We're having fun, and I think it's a great thing to look at. So yeah, check out Jonathan's Letterboxd. It's really a great follow.
Thank you.
I enjoy it quite a bit.
Well, it's to add on to it, it negates subjectivity. It's all an algorithm. So you can't complain because the numbers.
It's not my fault.
Yeah, the numbers don't lie.
I mean, there's no way to completely negate subjectivity. All these lists have their own levels of subjectivity, but what it does by adding as many as possible, it goes, we're going to factor down the subjectivity as much as we possibly can, and I think that's a really cool thing to try to do. And so
I would be the first.
Rephrase it negates John's subjectivity.
Right. Yes, that's right.
Well, to be fair, I have added my own weight to each of these lists, and I deliberately chose to give box office more weight than like BFI Sight and Sound list. But because it's an Excel sheet that I encourage people to download, you can add your own numbers, and you can zero out everything and give everything the exact same weight, and then restack the deck to see how that changes. Or you can be like, I only care about Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic, and I just want to erase everything else and see how the list looks then. You can do that. So it's more like a tool than it is a de facto 1 through 1,000.
You can add an element to the math that says, if the words Crystal Skull are in the title, subtract 100 points, and you can just do that, right? That's completely objective. Then it's still math. It's still just math. All right, we're gonna get.
You're really hung up on this Crystal Skull bit, Aaron.
I'm getting the sense you don't like it.
It was the two of them, and I think Transformers is pretty far down too. But it was the 2 of those movies where it's like. Okay, and I think it was the original Transformers, which, by the way, is the best Transformers movie, according to my, subjective opinion. And there were certainly things present in that first Transformers movie that then became emphasized in the other movies, where it was like, oh, okay, we're going to go the
metal
direction.
that makes no sense. Now I'm a car.
Yes, all that stuff. But yes, I'm more willing to accept that one than the Crystal Skull. Although, you know what? I haven't watched it since it came out. Maybe if I went back and watched it with new eyes, I'd love it. You never know.
You won't, but it's not as terrible as I think many people say.
Well, we're getting a new Indiana Jones movie apparently, so hopefully it'll wash a little bit of the taste out.
If it makes you feel better, Raiders is in the top 30.
Yeah,
and that for me, it's one of the posters I have in my office here. One of my all-time favorite films. So the fact that and Back to the Future are also in like the top 50, it's like, okay, we got some good ones. Singing in the Rain is way up high. I know that's your personal favorite.
That's my number
Aaron.
one. Yeah. So yeah. No, it's like I said, overall, it is an absolutely great list. And I think I ended up somewhere around, I was actually really surprised, somewhere around 68% of the top 1,000 that I've seen. And I couldn't believe that. Like Letterboxd does that automatically if you've marked like what movies you've seen on the site.
I'm still at about 62% myself. I have 380 movies left to go. And most of them are foreign films, which is probably why I've taken
Mine too.
A bit to get
Mine too.
around
Yeah.
them. A lot of Korean, a lot of Japanese cinema, a lot of Chinese stuff, and I'm excited to watch it. And I feel like Andrew, you've probably seen a good chunk more of those than I have, and always welcome to the recommendations.
Yeah, if you ever need a recommendation for like even an old Japanese samurai or spaghetti western, I know I've seen a lot of Korean movies, so we can talk for sure.
Okay, good.
I am never more aware of my inability to focus than when I watch a subtitled movie, and it's good for me. It's really good for me to like have to be able to go, oh no, I have to have my head up the entire movie because I'm apt to check on my phone or you can't
do that. You got to pay attention.
You got to pay attention, and I love that, and I should be called on that. You know what I mean? Like I should continue to exercise those muscles. So yeah, it's good stuff. It's good stuff.
Yeah, John, I'll throw out one recommendation for you real quick. There's this little indie Korean film you may or may not heard of. It's called Parasite. It's fairly recent. Honestly,
that's a good pick. I love that. I think that was my favorite movie last year. I don't know if I actually formalized my top 10 of 2019.
It was my number 2. Yeah,
it was. If it wasn't number 1, it was 1 or 2. It was way up there.
The only movie I had above it was Knives Out. But yeah, it was definitely up there.
Actually, that might be my 1 too as well.
Yeah,
I'll have to go back and look.
I think last year it was a pretty consistent. At least the people in my circle, the consistency was whether you had Parasite or Knives Out at number 1, the other one was at number 2, kind of thing.
Right.
Actually, yeah, it was between that and Knives Out. No, Parasite was number 3 for me. So yeah.
Okay. Very nice.
Behind Joker in 1917.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I remember that now. We don't have time to go into all that. Let's we
have a show to do, don't we?
That's right. Let's head into it. Let's talk a little bit about Let Them All Talk. The story of a celebrated author who takes a journey with some old friends to have some fun and heal old wounds. Her nephew comes along to wrangle the ladies as well as her literary agent, who is desperate to find out about her next book. Meryl Streep, Candice Bergen, Diane Wiest, Lucas Hedges, Gemma Chan, all hanging out in this movie doing great work. It's a Steven Soderbergh film, which he is like the streamer's best friend the last several years. He just continues to put out incredible content. I remember when incredible amounts of content is what I meant to say, although for me, I think it's been incredible content too. But there was a moment when he was doing a show called The Nick. Do you remember when Steven Soderbergh did The Nick on, I think it was Cinemax that had that show?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay, it's a pretty incredible medical show, and he had said at that moment he thought he was done with movies, which we hear from artists, every once in a while. And I think what he meant was, I'm done with kind of the system, and I want to do my own thing. And as he's kind of gone from then out, you've just seen that with release after release after release, where it's like, I'm going to do Unsane, and I'm just going to shoot it on an iPhone. I'm going to do a High Flying Bird and just give it to Netflix. And it's just kind of this interesting late career just ability for him to do the things he wants to do. So I want to have the broader Soderbergh conversation, which we're also going to do a best ever challenge on his movies. But let's start here with this movie specifically. Let Them All Talk. What did you guys think? Did you like it, love it, dislike it, hate it, or it was just okay? And Jonathan, why don't you start?
I liked it. And I think I liked it more than I thought I was going to, largely because I was expecting to walk into sort of a late season Meryl Streep, Oscar bait type of movie that isn't typically geared towards my demo. It's not a movie that I appreciate but don't necessarily enjoy. And this was kind of both. I definitely enjoyed it. It was funnier and a little more breezy than I expected. But I'd love to hear your thoughts too before we get deeper.
Andrew, what about you? Like it, love it, dislike it, hate it, or was just okay?
I am gonna land in the low side of it was okay.
Okay.
Kind of close to didn't like it, but there's enough here for me to go, it was okay.
It sounds like I may be the highest on it. I'm probably high side of liked it. I don't think there's enough here for me to go into loved it. I will admit my Soderbergh biases. Over the years, I have really fallen in love with him as a director, not as a person, because I just don't have that much contact with him to, be able to. I love him that he is a human being, and I love all human beings. But as far as a more intimate, relationship, we don't have one. But as a director, I have really fallen in love with him. Through his kind of late career, and I'm late to the Soderbergh train. I didn't watch Out of Sight and The Limey and some of that early stuff until later on. And Ocean's 11 was probably, how I knew him the most. But I have that bias now because I watch his movies and I'm just like, man, how to make what could be the boringest story ever just interesting to me. I watch this and I'm just like, this is a pretty dry story, but I am just engaged in these people, the way they're talking to each other. Much has been made of the kind of improv aspect of the shooting of this film. Basically, they got on the Queen Mary with an outline of a script and said, here's what's happening during this scene. You guys be your characters. Do these lines. My understanding is that the screenwriter was available through the entire trip to actually write specific lines for scenes as they were doing them, so the actors would go.
I like that you refer to it as a trip because they literally did a Atlantic crossing and filmed the movie practically in real time, or not real time, but chronologically at least it seems. Used all natural lighting, all improv.
Yeah,
I really dug the dialogue in this movie because it felt so authentic. People were stuttering. They were doing this a lot, and they would talk over each other. They would interrupt. It felt like the antithesis of a really good Sorkin script, but in a good way. Like Sorkin, for all of his wonderful screenplays, has that it's so perfect. I am distracted by the elocution of everyone involved. This felt real. It felt honest, and people were vulnerable. Especially Meryl Streep. I thought she did, as always, a fantastic performance. But there was something about that just fly on the wall. Let's just film them in the natural lighting, literally on the deck of this cruise ship, and just let them all talk.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Now, Andrew, you liked it, sounds like the least of us. But what were some of the things that you did like about it?
Well, I didn't know about the dialogue and the way that they decided to go about it with I guess you could say a bare bones script. Because for me, many times in this movie where I felt the movie was trying to invoke a thought of, something that you just said is very profound, very philosophical or insightful. It felt forced, but now I guess that I know that it was kind of improv. I'm more leaning towards, maybe it's just what they felt was right to say in the moment. But for me, in the moment of watching it, I'm like, it seems like this movie's trying to make me think at a higher level, but it's just not really, there for me yet to go, ooh, wow, that was profound. Or
it's interesting you say that because I got the opposite sense. I don't think this movie wanted me to think at all. It was very just enjoy, just experience, just watch. I did not get a lot of highbrow connotations from it. The movie deals a lot with ulterior motives and keeping secrets from one another. There's this great line that Candice Bergen gives towards the halfway point where she says, if you can't keep a secret yourself, you can't ask anyone else to. And I think that's, if anything is the theme of this movie, it's that. And that to me didn't seem particularly intellectual or heady. It was just, these are old friends coming to terms with a faded and perhaps forgotten relationship. And they're trying to figure out, why did I like these people? Why do I still hang around with them?
She's kind of great in this movie, isn't she?
Candice Bergen is so good.
I think she's the best part of this movie.
She is.
She's kind of incredible. I'm watching. It's one of those things where you find a character, you're like, I don't know that I've really seen this character portrayed this authentically before. You know, this kind of person, and unabashedly, gold digging. And just like, I don't know, there was just something really.
Her character introduction is telling off her manager. We're like, hey, I'm taking a vacation for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. Well, can you find someone to fill in? No, that's your job. You're the manager. Bye.
Yeah.
And I was like, yes, I love this woman. She's my hero.
I think that, I don't want to say I think, but there's moments in this where I feel the movie tries to villainize that character, where whenever I'm watching it, I'm in my head, I'm going, I don't think she's really the villain. I think she's, if anything, a victim in this.
I think
did you guys
like
have
each
that
character,
thought at all?
I think each character has a bit of that victim mentality, where each one feels like they're inferior in certain ways. Meryl Streep's character is trying to live up to this reputation of a very successful author, and all of her friends are trying to live up to, I don't know, being worthy of being in her company. I definitely got the sense that each character was trying to fight for their own place, but in a very like low stakes, low key, internalized way. That was interesting, but never like super thought provoking, which I guess is why I'm just sort of in the middle of, I liked it. It was good. And I think there might be some awards consideration here, but.
Yeah, we'll see. Andrew, are you saying you felt the character was treated unfairly at times?
Yeah, but I don't know that I got that sense.
Treated unfairly, but I think that's also intentional for the movie to do that. Like, oh, I don't think that that's fair, but life's not fair. I think that's kind of what the movie is saying for certain elements of what happens to these people.
I think I understand what you're saying. I think the movie does a pretty good job at calling, except maybe Susan, except maybe Diane Weist's character. I think almost everybody in this movie gets called on their BS. Like there's a moment or two where they are awakened, if not to their face, we are awakened to how others see them and see through them. There's a moment where the other two women are talking about Alice, and has she always talked that way? No, I don't think she has. Like those kind of things where everybody has, and this is a human thing, right? We all have our artifice, whether we try to eliminate it or not. Even with the people we're closest to, we have, those kind of things. And, sometimes the self-awareness is higher than others. And sometimes, we need to know that we've been seen through, and that, that there's a little bit of the authentic, poking out. And I think that's what's happening here with these three friends, is they're finding the authenticity under, the buildup of artifice that happens in relationships over the years. So yeah, I don't know. I think to me, and I'll just say this, we will do probably a very, very short Sif spoil on Let Them All Talk, because I do want to talk about where this movie goes ultimately.
I was going to say, I really enjoyed most of this, and I think I was heading towards like an 8 out of 10 rating. Mm-hmm. But then like the last 15 to 20 minutes went in a direction that was maybe expected or maybe predictable given the sort of buildup of the existing narrative, but I was hoping it would go somewhere else. I was hoping for a different resolution.
It's very interesting. The last 15 minutes of this movie put me in the higher side of liked it. I really loved the ending of this
for
movie.
me, it was like, oh, okay. I guess that tracks with where you were going, but like I was kind of hoping for something else.
Yeah, I'm with Aaron on that, because for a majority of this movie, I was going, I really don't like this. I'm not having fun at all. I don't. My enthusiasm to care and see the journey of these people was not being met. But the last 15 minutes made me go, okay, I want to see what happens next now. And then I realized there's 7 minutes left in the movie. I'm like, oh, what? But it's a very good, and I even want to say cathartic ending to a movie.
Yeah, it was for me as well, and I'm excited to talk about. We will do a very brief Sif spoil on the end of this movie that will be in your podcast feed as well if you have seen the film.
So what do you think? Do we recommend this one?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely do. We haven't talked really much at all about kind of the side plot between Lucas Hedges, Tyler and Karen, Lucas Hedges, and is it Gemma Chan? Or I mean, it's a G, so I get confused sometimes.
It's Gemma.
I'm pretty sure it is Gemma
I
Chan.
really enjoyed that side plot. I think
I
Lucas
do
is
too.
fantastic. He's been great in the last few projects he's done. Manchester by the Sea, probably chief among them. And it was sort of this like puppy dog romance where he thinks that they're having a connection. And it's like, nah, dude, this chick is 15, 16 years your senior. She's just being polite. She's just trying to use you to get to the next person. And big swing and a miss for his sort of plot arc. But it was really interesting and relatable to watch, I think.
I really enjoyed it too. And I enjoyed there are different levels of what the story is allowing you to understand and what it's hiding from you. And I really felt like with that specific storyline, it was never hidden. You know, it was always there, and that's what made it good. Like you knew things that he didn't know. Like you were aware of, and again, that's what I talk about with the BS self-awareness kind of thing. Like he had to deal with his own self-awareness of this situation, and she had to deal with the self-awareness of what it means to be a publisher and the idea of, trying to get information out of your artist. And it's, I don't know, there really are some interesting themes here when I really, start to think about it. But overall, it's just, it really is what it purports to be, which is just an easygoing story about three women on a crossing of the Atlantic. And I don't know. Soderbergh always does this to me. I'm generally come away from his movies just going, man, I really enjoyed watching that. So yeah. It's a recommend obviously for me. And especially because if you've already got HBOMax, it's there waiting for you. So,
I would say that would be the qualifier of my recommendation. If you already have HBO Max, I would recommend it. I would check it out. I especially think this is definitely a movie for the mom crowd. This is one I'm going to recommend to mine. I think she would really enjoy this. I think maybe the 30 and under crowd might not. That's just my own sort of inherent bias on this one. But it was good. I enjoyed it.
Where do you sit on the recommendation?
I can't recommend this one. It's one that I felt like, while I was watching it, I was present and the ending is really good, but to sit through an hour and 40 minutes just to get there, I don't think it's worth it. I think that Meryl Streep is good. Like, I think that, for Meryl Streep, she doesn't live up to some of the other performances she did. I think Candace is, if you're going to say anybody has a great performance in this, it's her. My biggest pro for this movie, before we move on, I wanted to throw out, is I think that this might be the best shot Soderbergh movie that I've ever seen. I think that every single camera angle and scenery that he chose was absolutely perfect. This is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful movie.
And they did it with all natural lighting, which I think is even more impressive. And you can definitely tell on some of the crew's interiors, like, okay, that's very orange. No one white balanced this, and it's like you can't, because cruise ships are just that color fluorescent.
Yeah, I felt like I was on the ship.
But I like that. I really enjoyed the cinematic look of this movie, and I totally agree with you. It was beautiful.
And apparently, it was just Soderbergh with the camera in a wheelchair, and that's how he shot it. And that's how they did the dollying. Is just him in a wheelchair. That's something he learned. I think he talked about learning on Unsane with the iPhone, was to use a wheelchair as kind of the dolly, and just to get into places.
That's an old film school trick. My buddies and I used to do that. Get in a chair and I'll push you. There we go. That's our dolly.
It'll work.
We filmed a movie with a wheelchair as a dolly once too.
Yeah. It works out nice.
It works.
All film students figure that out real quick.
Yeah.
Soderbergh took a couple extra decades, but I'm glad he got there.
All right, let's move on. We will move from the light and airy to the deep and meaningful. We're going to hit Small Axe Mangrove. Mangrove centers on Frank Critchlow, the owner of Notting Hill's Caribbean restaurant Mangrove, a lively community base for locals, intellectuals, and activists. In a reign of racist terror, the local police raid Mangrove time after time, making Frank and the local community take to the streets in peaceful protest in 1970. This is the first of 5 movies in the Small Axe collection from Steve McQueen, who always does fascinating work, interesting work. And I think the idea is to tell some of these small stories from a continuing education for many people who haven't heard them about how race has impacted different people's lives in different ways. This certainly has been a year for that. It's been a year for me to continue to grow, to understand my own privilege as a white person, continue to grow, to be a listener, and more than, somebody who's speaking on these issues. And to continue to figure out what it means to be an ally as somebody with privilege. And so I love how many of these stories are getting told. And I love the fact that Steve McQueen was like, here's 5 things you may not have heard. I'm going to make a movie about each one of them and put them up on Amazon. And Mangrove kicks us off on that. And so I'm curious from you guys, what did you think? Did you like it, love it, dislike it, hate it, or was just okay? Andrew, why don't you start this time?
I'm somewhere in between really liked and loved it. So I'm probably leaning more towards, I'll just come out and say I loved it, just to make it simple.
Fair enough.
I loved it.
Jonathan?
I just liked it, or maybe just okay.
Okay. I am right dead center liked it. I know a lot of that has to do with some of the things I was just talking about. And I know that there is a lot of my heart involved in these stories, and so to see that. But let's get into some of the details of what you guys thought about it. Andrew, since you seem to enjoy it the most, tell us what you loved about
it. First off, incredibly powerful story. I see a lot of people asking, why do films like this keep getting made? And the unfortunate answer is because there's so much. They still need to be made. There's so much we still need to learn of coming from, like Aaron said, places of privilege, that the more of this we see, hopefully the better understanding of, what has happened and what is continuing to happen that we could possibly take from it and learn and hopefully try to better ourselves. And the fact that this is a true story, and there's times where you see stories about stuff like this that just it reminds you, like, how can human beings be so cruel, and the performances in this really drive home the reality of the situation. Like, you look at Sean Parks, who is our main character in this. He plays Frank Critchlow, and there's a moment in this movie where it's near the end where he's standing up and he just has his face just straight forward and tears just start to go down his eyes, and I'm like, this is an incredible performance, and it almost got me teary-eyed, because the emotion that you just see on his face, he's not doing anything, just a tear going down, but that face just says so much, just weight on his shoulders, and for not only him, but you feel like he is embodying a community and a people at that moment, and just you feel for not only him but for everyone. It's truly a powerful movie, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't really disagree with any of that. I thought the performances were outstanding. I think there is an incredible high level of difficulty, possibly, with the dialect and accent and those kind of things that they are doing.
Everyone's speaking with a very very thick, deep, Caribbean, London accent.
Yeah, and, I definitely
subtitles help on this one.
Needed my subtitles for sure, and that's okay. I generally actually these days watch stuff with subtitles on anyway. But yeah, it's it's definitely one where the performances weren't the issue for me. I really bought into them as characters. I bought into the world as it was presented to me, and it was definitely a story that I was glad to hear, like you said, Andrew. So I agree with all of that. Jonathan, what are some of your thoughts?
No, I completely echo everything you just said, actually. The acting, Letitia Wright was especially fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of really powerful, impassioned monologues in this, especially in the last third, that you want to stand up and applaud and help these people and be like, why are we so hateful and ignorant and racist as a culture? And certainly my own privilege, we need to check that at the door, that three white guys are reviewing a film about sort of Black history here. And it's frustrating from a film standpoint, because I want to appreciate and I want to like this more. But having just seen The Trial of the Chicago 7 a month or two ago, which is virtually the same story, or at least the major beats are exactly the same. And even just from the sort of racial tension, historical civil rights era programs like this, it's all so frustratingly familiar. And I think that's why I didn't love this one, is as much as these stories need to be told, and I love that Steve McQueen is doing 5 different movies on this period of time in that part of the world that people like me and you have never heard of. At the same time, as a movie, it's like I kind of have heard these stories before. And as good as the performance and the monologues and the dialogue all is, I left this one feeling the same way I always do, like guilty and frustrated, and wishing I could do more, but we really can't. I think that's no real fault of the movie, but of my own personal life experiences, and certainly my experience with the 2-hour movie.
That you just touched on something that I think really deserves mentioning for me as well, and obviously,
did any of that make sense? By the way, I feel like
no.
Okay.
And I wanted to jump off of it because I think what holds me back from loving this, I said I liked it, I really did. And when I say that in this case, it means I really felt like it was a worthwhile watch, and there are a lot of reasons that something
Completely
can be
agree.
worth watching, right? But I think what you just touch on is something that's really important to acknowledge, and this is part of bias and part of the thing we continue to talk about, which is the inability to connect with certain things because of your own experience. Now, in this case, that's not just the racial things we're talking about, again, as a white person. That's also geographical things. The court system was a little foreign to me. I get the American court system, but you put it in England, and I get a little bit more of like what barristers are and kind of how it works. And the movie does an okay job at explaining those things to you and allowing you to understand. One of the biggest story points of this movie is the idea of them representing themselves, and a couple of them choose to represent themselves. It's a really beautiful part of the movie, and I think probably the most powerful tool the movie has to really deliver those speeches and to really, have those moments is because the people who are delivering them aren't the barristers, aren't the lawyers. They're the people who actually experienced it.
And I will say those moments are probably my favorite in the movie.
Yes,
when Letitia Wright and Michaela Kirby were both representing themselves on the stand, cross-examining the witnesses and the constables. Those scenes were great. They were brilliant. Because they're speaking out of their own impassioned experience of being suppressed and being targeted by the London police, and voicing those frustrations in such a real and accountable and legal way, where they finally get to sort of flip the table, and that felt very vindicated, where they get to really like, okay, this is my turn to put you under the microscope and make you feel uncomfortable and make you ridiculed. And I enjoyed that immensely. But like the first hour of this movie, where we lead up to the courtroom, it for me felt very repetitious. That all right, this guy has a Caribbean restaurant. It represents sort of the cultural center of this neighborhood. All right, I understand that. I connect with it. I get it. That's established in the first 5 minutes. The next 5 minutes, we establish the cops don't like him, and they're going to harass him, take away licenses, flip over tables, just make his life hell. But then 45 more minutes go by where we just see that just repeated so many more times. Like, okay, we get it. The Black people in this community are disrespected constantly by the police, and they can't do anything to fight back, else they get thrown in jail. And it really isn't until they get to trial that it's like, okay, the story is moving forward rather than just spinning its wheels.
Yeah, I agree. If I had two things that aside again from my own personal inability to connect to some of it, that kind of held me back. One is what you're talking about. I think this movie is a slow start, and it's not that I'm bored necessarily. It's just that I feel like we take a lot of time to get somewhere we understood in the first scene, and we didn't need the second and the third. Like I think I wanted to get to the courtroom faster, and I know how weird that sounds, but yeah, it's just it was a slow start for me. And then the other aspect is, I want to be very careful when I say this, but I am more impacted these days by the stories that allow us to really understand bias more than overt racism. And there's so much overt racism in this movie that is where and that's fine, because we need to understand that overt racism continues to hurt people and those kind of things. But I connect deeper to the idea of, here is the subconscious racism that I deal with, that I have to continue to purge, because I think it's very easy in a movie like this for people who don't want to deal with their biases to go, oh, that's not me. I don't see myself in that, policeman.
No, I completely agree. And it's so easy to just be like, all right, white man, bad, he's evil.
Right.
He kicks and punches, and he's just throwing these people down the stairs for no reason. Like, all right, he's obviously the villain.
Right.
And it's almost not necessarily here. I think it's definitely done better than some older movies. Like,
correct.
Remember the Titans is a great film, but like the racism in that is just so kind of cartoonish and so like so obviously just like narrowed into, yes, obviously this is racism, but especially today in 2020, Steve McQueen is trying to bring us events from the past and recontextualize them in a way that is
correct,
applicable and important in today's society. And I think what you're talking about, Aaron, is really hits the nail on the head. Where is that sort of subtle under the radar racism the same type we're seeing here? And I don't know that it's the movie racism was just like, yeah, they're literally beating these people up for no reason. No one really has a problem with that. It's that really subtle stuff that we're still coming to terms with as like a society.
Yeah. Well, it's why a movie like Get Out is so powerful, because the subtlety and even the overcorrection of racism, like in Get Out, there's the line, "I would have voted for Obama for a third term."
Right.
Just to say, hey, look at me, I'm not racist. Look at all the not racist things I'm doing. That's why that is a much more impactful movie, I guess.
I agree completely.
Having said that, there are things that John brought up earlier that I want to hit on, but I also agree with you guys. I think that the movie is too long. It could have cut out about 20 minutes of build up to the courtroom of just repetitive, abuse. But you brought up how this movie reminds you of other movies. Particularly, you mentioned Trial of Chicago 7. It hit me when I was watching this that, yeah, there are parts of this movie where I'm like, yeah, I think that the Trial of Chicago 7 did it better. Or at the beginning of this movie where I'm like, yeah, I think Do the Right Thing did it better, And I just kept having this thought of, this other movie did this part better. It was about, I'd say, 20 minutes into the trial section of this movie where I had, I guess you could say, an epiphany where I was like, this doesn't have to be the best at doing every single thing. It can be great at doing something. I need to quit comparing it to other movies that it is either doing an homage to or familiar or similar to. Just, there are parts of this movie I think that the performances in this are great. I think that the story is powerful. I think that the way that Steve McQueen is able to make this story as real as it is, believable, as heartbreaking as that is. So once I had that thought and I looked back at the movie as a whole, that's when I started to realize this movie is saying something I need to hear, even though I've heard this I don't want to say tale of woe because it makes it sound Like
Sure.
it's not as powerful or as important, as it is. But while I was watching it, I'm like, the fact that he's bringing something to light and to let me know that I guess another way I could say it is a lot of the movies that deal with racism that I've seen take place in America. Because you look at movies like Mississippi Burning or even Trial of Chicago 7. There's a lot of movies that deal with, this thing of racism. This helped me understand that this is a global, you could even call it a pandemic. This racist pandemic that has swept the globe. And it's easy to forget that it exists outside of America. And this was just a reminder that we got to look other places too and realize that it's.
I think
everywhere.
certainly its location and the setting in London and inside Notting Hill is probably the most refreshing and welcome aspects of this screenplay. That this is actually an environment and a time and a place I haven't seen before.
Yeah.
Because if this movie was set in Mississippi during the 1960s, it's like, okay, sure, I get it. We've literally seen this movie
that's what I'm
many
to say.
times.
Yeah.
And that's why I think I didn't rate it higher, because even with the change of setting and hearing about a story that I otherwise never would have heard about, I appreciate it for those elements, and I definitely enjoyed it and would recommend it. I just didn't come away going like, that was awesome, I need to watch it again.
Yeah, I think we would all recommend this. It is definitely, some movies are just important to watch, and I just think it's important to continue to hear these stories and participate in the growth as a culture and as a human being myself.
And it's definitely good that more movies like this from people that look like that are being made.
Yeah.
I think first and foremost.
We'll head into the best ever challenge, but I did want to say it's interesting too to hear the Trial of Chicago 7 comparison, because as much as that movie is about race, race is almost a subplot in that movie. That is more a movie about protest, right? Like the idea of, it just so happens that the judge was very, very racist, and there were elements of bringing in somebody just because of their skin color. And so we almost see that as a racial movie when really the heart of that movie is about protest, which obviously has been a thing with the civil rights movement and those kind of things as well. But yeah, it's interesting to compare the two, and I think it's a natural thing to do. But Andrew, I think you're right. Sometimes you just have to let a movie stand on its own and just say this is what it's trying to do, and I think that's a healthy way to watch what's going on here. All right, let's move into the best ever challenge. Before we do, though, I want to thank again our SIF Pop members. We had a hearty conversation during the SIF Pop pre-show this week about all the streaming stuff that's going on. We talked about all the Disney properties. We talked about some of the HBO, lawsuits, those kind of things that are happening. So good 15 minutes or so, we talked about a lot of that stuff. So if you are a SIF Pop member, that should be waiting for you at the Patreon. That's patreon.com/SIFPop. I say it should be waiting for you as soon as it's edited and posted and those kind of things.
And
I forget
where
we're
else,
live on the internet right now. If you go right now, it's not there. We just recorded it. But if you're listening on the podcast, it may have made its way there.
And where else are you going to find Aaron's pick for, the absolute number one thing he's looking forward to out of this Disney drop?
That's right. That's right.
Gotta figure,
you gotta check that out.
What is his most anticipated new Disney property?
Yeah, I mean,
the answer will surprise you,
as will Jonathan's. Patreon.com/SiftPop. You can go check that out, and thank you again to all our existing members. We really appreciate you. It is humbling that you would send money our way, and we continue to do everything we can to provide good content for you. So thanks for that. Check it out again at Patreon.com/SiftPop. All right, best ever challenge. We're going to talk about best ever Steven Soderbergh movies.
Never heard of him.
He's a brand new director. It was interesting. I went back and looked, and I am just so unfamiliar with his early filmography. Movies like Full Frontal I haven't seen. Like you go back to some of those. The Good German, I think, is another one. Just some of those, and I'm like, man, I've got a lot of gaps. He's made 30 movies or so, when I was looking at it, it was absolutely incredible. I have seen 18 of them, so
that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
I mean, and it's basically since Out of Sight. I've basically seen most of Out of Sight on, with a few exceptions. So I'm curious, before we get into this, about your own Soderbergh kind of experience. Jonathan, why don't you kind of kick us off? What's your familiarity with his films? How many have you seen?
Sure.
That kind of thing.
I've seen 13. I think Ocean's 11 was probably my introduction, but I've gone back and seen a couple older ones. And we mentioned in the pre-show last time I was on the show a month ago, my list of shame as a sample pick, I grabbed Aaron Brockovich. And I haven't seen that. I still haven't. I wish I had time this week so that I could have possibly included it in my top 5. But I've always sort of been aware of him, and I've enjoyed some of his filmmaking techniques, certainly. But he's never been like a top-tier director for me. And there's only one movie that stands out as like a real classic. And I guess we'll get to that in a bit.
Yes, we will. Andrew, what about you?
I lean more towards with John on this because whenever I think of like a movie that I would consider a classic, I can only think of one. I think he's a phenomenal director, don't get me wrong. He has the ability to, whenever he makes a specific style of movie, which you'll notice from my list, that's the type of movie that I really am drawn towards. With
does it rhyme with Feist? Does it rhyme with
when it rhymes with the word Feist? Yeah. But also he can make a very dramatic and dark movie. So he has range, and I really do appreciate that about him. But I wouldn't consider myself a fanatic of Soderbergh like you.
I'm becoming one for sure, and it's been a gradual evolution to one, and I think I've kind of landed as a Soderbergh fanatic now. So that's hey, it happens. You kind of fall in love with somebody's work, and you start to see more of it. And there was a stretch, and we will get into the list eventually, but there was a stretch of movies that I just thought were underrated gems, and I realized at one point they were all Soderbergh movies, and I was like, oh, this guy's speaking to me in some way. And we'll talk about that in the honorable mentions, because actually only one of them made my my top 5. But let's kick it off at number 5. Andrew, why don't you start, and we'll just go along the way.
I'll probably get Trump for this, but I'm going to go with Contagion.
Yeah, I'll Trump you.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll Trump you on that. Trump. That's definitely a movie that's seen some seen some uptick over the last year for some reason or other.
That's what,
can't imagine
why. Jonathan, what's your number 5?
Out of Sight.
I'll Trump you on that one too.
Okey-doke.
Guess it gets my number 5 then.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll get Trump. This will be fun. My number 5 is The Informant! ! Or The Informant!
The Informant!
This is a really fun movie, and it is a singular Matt Damon performance. And if you have not seen it, I highly recommend it, if for no other reason than for that. And just, it's a lot of fun. It's just a really interesting character in interesting situations. And I don't want to give up, too much about it, but man, it's a good time from start to finish. So yeah, The Informant's a good one.
It is. Just seeing Matt Damon, and once he starts talking, you look at the TV like, shut up. Please shut up.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't know what you're doing. Shut up. It really is a fun one.
Jonathan, have you seen The Informant?
I did. I had to double check. I almost forgot. Over 10 years ago, one of the first movies I actually reviewed on my YouTube channel way back when I started doing film reviews. Yeah. I didn't like it though. My review here, 4 out of 10. And I think I said, wasn't really for me. It failed to spark my interest. I do remember really enjoying Matt Damon. I will watch him and have in just about anything. I think I've seen something like 48 Matt Damon movies. He is fantastic.
Yeah.
And I'm from the North Shore of Boston like him, so sort of the hometown
Makes
hero
sense.
for us around here.
Makes sense. All right, on to number 4. Andrew, what do you got?
This is where I have Aaron Brockovich.
Nice. I had it in my honorable mentions.
Okay.
And I haven't seen it.
Yeah. Yeah, Julia Roberts kills it. I think it's a fascinating story. Whenever there's a big cover-up, or something like that, I think that those stories are always fascinating. Aaron, you and I, we both love true stories, and taking on a David versus Goliath sort of thing.
Yeah.
And she just has this "don't mess with me" mama bear mentality about her that is just so fun to watch. She really nails this role, and you can't help but root for her and love her. So yeah, it's great.
No, it's a good movie. It's a lot of fun. We are a pro-family show here at Sif Pop. Jonathan, if you need to parent, we are totally okay with that.
Mom will take care of the screaming child downstairs. Everything you just described, Andrew, is why I'm convinced when I do finally see this movie, I'm probably going to like it. Any movie where it's a David versus corporation, I'm like, yes, screw the corporation, take him down.
Oh yeah, that's 100% what this movie is.
Yeah, and I love those stories. I'm a sucker.
Yeah, you're going to dig this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a really great Aaron Eckhart role too.
Right on.
Well, let's see if it gets trumped. No, go ahead. Actually, Jonathan, you haven't done your number 4.
Magic Mike.
Oh, nice. Good choice. I had it in my honorable mentions as well.
This is a film, definitely as a straight man in my 30s, was not expecting to enjoy as much as I did. But the performances are really solid. I think Matthew McConaughey, this is sort of the beginning of the McConaughey Renaissance, whatever we're calling that.
The McConaissance.
The McConaissance. Yes, and Channing Tatum, this kind of put him on the map. I think he was definitely kicked around a bit before then, but this was his first big breakout role. And it's a movie about trust and brotherhood and male relationships in a way that few other movies had really explored, at least ones that I had seen and connected with. And it's excellent. It's a really good movie.
Really is.
Completely, irrespective of the fact it's about male strippers. Which is a world, obviously, I don't really have a lot in common with. I don't connect to those circles. I don't know any male strippers. But this is a movie I came away from feeling really empathetic towards the characters, and I felt related to them in a meaningful way. And that's hard to do, especially when it's a topic that I have no interest in exploring.
Yeah, it remains one of my most interesting screenings I've ever been to.
I saw this at home, but I can only imagine.
Yeah,
it was very popular.
It was opening weekend, and I went to a packed 300-seat, probably, theater for this, and I know there were maybe 10% male, and I don't know of that percentage necessarily, straight, gay, whatever, but the hooting and hollering around me was insane, and I just remember thinking through the entire movie, I'm really enjoying this movie, but I think everybody else is getting something different out of it than I am. It's I don't know that we're all here for the same reason. But yeah, it remains a singular movie-going experience for me.
That's great.
And really a lot of fun, and just punctuated by, and I guess I won't share it here, but just one of the most interesting conversations I heard behind me about which body parts were and weren't shown on which actors when the movie was over by the kind, let's just say, veteran women behind me. They were definitely having an intense discussion about the nudity or non-nudity in this movie.
I'll side with them. There's not enough male nudity shown in any mainstream Hollywood film.
It's fair.
For every pair of boobs, there's maybe we get very, very few of the opposite.
Yeah. So, anyways, it remains
unfair.
An interesting experience, and one that I come away from liking the movie, but possibly for different reasons than everybody else liked it in the theater. Yeah, nice. All right, so on to my number 4, which we'll see if it gets trumped again. This is where I have Contagion. So I assume it has to be trumped since you only have your 3, 2, 1 left. Andrew, what do you have at number 3?
This is where I have Logan Lucky.
Trump.
Okay.
Well, what about your number 3 then?
Contagion.
Hey,
we made it.
All right, so you had it at 3, I had it at 4, and Andrew had it at 5.
We can count.
You had it at number 3, so why don't you talk first?
This is a movie I maybe kind of slept on. I saw it when it came out 9 years ago. I enjoyed it. Rewatching it at the beginning of the pandemic, this March or April, it was oh, wow, this was an extremely prescient experience. Soderbergh nailed it. This is exactly how everything went. The term social distancing was a completely new 2-word phrase to everybody this March. Soderbergh was dropping it in the screenplay out of Lawrence Fishburne's mouth 9 years ago.
Yep.
And I think for that alone, it's like, okay, yeah, no, this movie sort of was calling its shot early. And it's one of those ensemble pieces like Traffic, where there's a lot of different moving parts and a lot of different moving directions. Not all of the big name actors connect directly, but they're all part of the same sort of connective tissue. And I kind of love the way everything weaves together. And we stick with, again, my boy Matt Damon mostly throughout. And it's very interesting. I think from a sort of procedural national process, like how does a nation deal with this? I think Contagion gets a lot of those beats really well. And on the human side of things, how does a family navigate this turmoil? I think I got most of that right too.
Yeah. I think I retweeted this year at some point my original review of Contagion, because my original view of Contagion was I came out of this movie not wondering if there would ever be a pandemic and what it would be like, but knowing that it's going to happen and this is what it's going to be like, or something like that.
Right.
And
it's so realistic. And the fact that
really
it was 9 years ago and it still got so much down to the T. And look, watch the last 30 minutes of this movie if you're wondering how the vaccine rollout is going to go. Because this is we already have the blueprint.
That's right. Yeah. It's astonishing. And beyond the prescience that you mentioned, it's just a really great movie. It's really well made. It's very intense. And yeah, I was blown away by this movie. And this was where my love, the seed was planted for my love of Soderbergh was Contagion.
The Soder
I
seed.
think. Yes, exactly. Yes.
The Cedarberg.
Fair enough. Thoughts on Contagion, Andrew?
The first time I actually watched this movie was after COVID hit. So it was like I was watching a future documentary of sorts.
Right?
Yeah. It's interesting hearing your guys, recollections of watching it before COVID, and like, yeah, it predicted everything. So my viewing experience was one of, okay, yeah, they got that right. They got that right. They got that right. Okay, yeah, so Soderbergh had the ability to predict the future. Yeah, I can confirm he knew everything that was going to happen. I love how this movie tackles every aspect of what a pandemic is. Like, whether it be the CDC or you have the... I especially loved Jude Law's conspiracy theory kind of character, like how that would affect, a panic-inducing, a mass hysteria of sorts. But I think the most prevalent part of this movie for me was the reveal of how easily this started. Like the last,
the very final shot.
Yeah, the very 4 minutes, last 4 minutes of this movie, where I'm like, oh, it's that easy, huh? Oh, humanity's screwed. We're done. No, if that's how easily this thing can start, there's no hope. There's no hope for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not a movie that leaves you with hopeful, we can do it kind of a message. It's this is what can happen, and most likely it will happen. And Soderbergh, I can confirm it did happen.
All right, let's move on to, I think we're on to
number
3,
I think.
My number 3 is going to be trumped. That's where I have Logan Lucky. So
Trump.
So we'll wait on that. And now we're on to our number 2s. Andrew.
This is where I have Traffic.
Oh, okay. I have an honorable mentions.
I haven't seen it.
It's a insanely powerful movie for me. Whenever I was talking about earlier movies that rhyme with the word Feist, that I also mentioned that he does darker, grittier movies too sometimes.
Yeah.
I was thinking Contagion, but the one I really thought of was Traffic. Yeah. This is a brutal movie about border trafficking and the drug. I think this is the first movie I saw where the reality of the drug epidemic in America and what it really looks like. I think this is the first movie I saw where that really made it real enough for me to go, oh, oh, so that's what it's like.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so that's what, either families who are dealing with people who deal with drug addiction are going through, or
Mm-hmm.
this is how the narcotics get, smuggled across the border or something like that, or what the agents involved with stopping these cartels. All of that in one movie. And it's not like overwhelming. Kind of like with a Contagion, where you have all these different elements. Like
Mm-hmm.
he's able to bring it all together in a way to where it doesn't seem encumbering. It seems informative and encompassing, not encumbering. So, but like I said, a caution for warning for this: it is a very brutal and graphic movie. That deals with that element of humanity. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, content warning, people.
Fair enough. Your number 2, Jonathan?
Logan Lucky.
Hey, we can talk about Logan Lucky. Man, we are kind of being consistent here, right? Because doesn't it go in the same order? You had it at number 2, I had it at number 3, and Andrew had it at number 4. Is that correct? Or did both Andrew and I have it at number 3?
I had it at number 3 as well.
All right, there you go. Tell us about
Well,
Logan
I'm glad
Lucky.
we all liked it, because this movie is delightful. It's
it's great.
Funny.
It's like
So
Hillbilly Ocean's 11 in the best way. And it's a heist movie with dumb people in the South. It's sort of a type of character and a type of location you don't usually see associated with a heist movie. It's usually the city. It's usually Vegas. It's usually bright lights and big banks.
Mm-hmm.
They try to rip off a NASCAR track here. And the results are sort of like a very fun, easy breezy experience. Like, this movie flies by. And Daniel Craig's performance with his Southern accent is absolutely just like chef's kiss. Like, he nails that with aplomb, and I think this is sort of his audition for Knives Out. Like, he is so fun in this movie. I have to think Rian Johnson was like, "Get me that James Bond for my movie." Like, he was great.
Is it
really
30 or is it 40? We are dealing with science here. It's so quotable. This movie's so quotable.
Yeah, it's really good. Driver's great in it too.
Yeah, everybody.
Did you just yell cauliflower at me?
It's so good. So good. Yeah, I don't really have much to add other than just see it if you haven't. Like many of Soderbergh's movies, I feel like it's an underrated gem, or an underseen gem maybe. I don't know that it's underrated, but it's definitely underseen. I think more people need to see it.
I'll say this. This could have easily been my number 1, but I think the ending of this movie is where this movie really needed some polishing, because I think that the ending of this movie is what keeps me from going, oh, that's Soderbergh's best movie. It really does kind of fall apart there.
Nice. I will name my number 2, but I have never been more sure of anything in the world that you are both going to trump my number 2. My number 2 is Ocean's 11.
Jump.
Yeah. So
Sorry.
Let's go ahead and talk about it, because it's both of your number 1s.
Sure is.
So what do you guys have to say about Ocean's 11? Andrew, why don't you kick us off?
If you ever want to have a movie besides, I think, Star Trek, the newer Star Trek movie, where you go, that is how you cast a movie. You know how to perfectly cast chemistry. I think Ocean's 11 is like one that you look at.
I'm so glad you brought that up, and Star Trek, because it textbook example of like excellent ensemble casting. When I remember when this was announced, whatever it was, 2 decades ago, just George Clooney and Matt Damon and Brad Pitt, and like, wow, this is great. And they all fit in a way that doesn't feel like anyone steps on anybody else's toes. I'll let you continue, but totally agree so far.
I think that Soderbergh, I know this is a remake, Ocean's 11, but I think that he, really captured how to make you feel like you were a part of the heist. Like you were the 12th member of Ocean's 11. Because, like, they show you everything in the movie, like the lead up to the heist, but it's only after they reveal it that you can go back and go, so whenever they were showing this, I should have really been looking over here. Oh, man. And it rewards you whenever you actually do notice something, and it turns out you were right. You're like, I called it, and it's so gratifying. Also, Vegas is a character in this movie, and I really love when a movie makes the environment that it takes place in feel alive and like lived in. I've never been to Vegas, but I feel like I have now that I've watched this movie.
I have been to Vegas. I've stayed at the Bellagio, and it looks and sounds just like this film in the best way. And I totally agree. Of all the movies ever shot in Vegas, this one I think definitely feels the most like its own mascot. Like this definitely champions that city in a respectful way that like makes the city look as exciting as I think it can be, especially if you're doing well, gambling wise. This movie's so much fun. It's funny. I think it's exciting. There's some good like action beats, or at least fast-paced, fast-moving sort of reveals. Everything involving the heist is done in such a way in terms of editing and nonlinear storytelling that it keeps you like one step behind the protagonist, but one step ahead of the villains. And it's a really cool way that the entire third act is sort of presented and revealed to the audience, that you're like, oh, wait a minute, are they showing me what's happening, or has it already happened? And now they've get it. Like, it's really cool. And I think Soderbergh was one of the first people to really spin that on the heist storytelling. Because up until then, any movie that was about a heist, any movie that was about an escape, you saw them plan it, then you saw them do it. This movie is like, you kind of see them do both at the same time, out of order, and you're not actually sure, am I seeing a dramatization? Am I seeing them faking it? Am I seeing them just think about it? And I love that sort of keeps you second guessing throughout.
I love this movie. It is of the Soderbergh movies, it's the one I've seen the most. I'm sure I've seen it at least half a dozen times. I've
seen it at least 4 or 5 times myself. It's a lot of
fun. Because it's just so fun to watch, and it is just such a great coming together of performances, characters, charisma, chemistry, all the hard C words, comedy. It's all there, and it's really great. It is my introduction to Soderbergh. That's the first Soderbergh movie I ever saw.
Same.
And I didn't really know I didn't know it as a Soderbergh movie. I just knew it as the Ocean's movies. Because he did all of them. He did 12 and 13 as well. He didn't do 8. He didn't direct 8.
He produced it.
He was on a producer on it. But yeah, I can't say enough good things about Ocean's 11. And up until last night, it was my number one Soderbergh movie.
What?
But I revisited Out of Sight last night.
Oh,
and
really?
I'm here to tell you, I think it's better than Ocean's 11. It has been a long time since I've seen this movie, and it blew me away. I am telling you, everything that you love about Ocean's 11 is here in Out of Sight. The charisma, the Clooney, the cast that you've got here. I don't have both of you seen the movie?
Many years ago. And
that's how it was for me.
I'm thinking you've already kind of convinced me. I need to go and revisit this one.
This is one to revisit if you haven't seen it in a while. I'm telling you, I had such a great experience last night. Let me just tell you some of the cast in here. You probably remember Jennifer Lopez and George Clooney, who are absolutely, the chemistry between them is absolutely incredible in this movie.
Yeah.
Don Cheadle, who we know from the Ocean's movies. Soderbergh had these people that, early in his career he really liked to use, and Cheadle was definitely one of them. Ving Rhames, basically kind of doing the Mission Impossible thing, him for. He's kind of that same personality character in this. Albert Brooks, doing an incredible role in this. Very funny. Steve Zahn is killing it in this movie, both hilarious and actually really dramatic. Catherine Keener is doing great work. Dennis Farina, who I love, is in here as well.
Dennis Farina is my all-time favorite movie cop.
Luis Guzman, who also was a Soderbergh staple back in the day, doing great stuff. And then little performances popping up in good story parts. Viola Davis, in her first real role, is in Out of Sight.
Good for her.
And it's great work, incredible work. And then Samuel Jackson shows up in this movie too. It's just I'm watching this and I'm just going, man, it had been way too long since I had seen this. And this movie is so tight. It is just like every moment, every movement is perfect. It is a heist movie. All that heist stuff you love in Ocean's 11 is here as well. I came away
really selling me on this. I'm definitely going to go back and watch.
I'm just telling you, I came away from the experience last night, like, I'm like 2/3 in, I'm going, man, this may be as good as Ocean's 11. And by the end, I'm like, I think it's better. I think it's a better movie than Ocean's 11. At least
I had it
right
at my
now,
number
I'm loving it
5,
more.
but
so
I'm gonna go back to it. I like what you're saying.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
I only remember because I saw it when it came out, which was like 2001?
1998.
1998, yeah. I just remember watching it and go, oh, these people are so pretty. These
well, there is
are,
that too.
These people are way too pretty. And the chemistry between Clooney and Lopez is it may be like the highest amount of sexual chemistry between two people I've ever seen.
It's insane. It is insane. Their love scene it's just crazy. And I came away from it going, that's actually kind of the thing it has above Ocean's 11, right? Is like, I believe that chemistry and that relationship and kind of and it's the heart of the story in many ways, more than really any of his other movies. And so, yeah, I would highly recommend a rewatch if it's been a while. And if you've never seen it and you like Ocean's 11, I mean, I think it's R-rated as opposed to PG-13. So there is that difference. I could be wrong about that.
It's
the content felt a little more adult, but yeah. Anyhow, it's definitely my number one, and was a great watch yesterday when I was catching up on things.
Glad to hear praise for an old movie.
I'll watch it today again.
That will take us into our honorable mentions, and I'll just kind of continue my thought process because I did go back and watch some that I haven't watched in a long time, like Out of Sight. I also rewatched Sex, Lies, and Videotape, which was really the movie that kind of put him on the map. I continue to think you can see his talent there, but it's not necessarily. I think I had it around number 12 or 13 as I kind of ranked them last night as I was thinking about it. So I went and rewatched that. I rewatched The Limey. I don't know if you guys have
I don't even know that one.
So that's Terrence Stamp, and is it's really where he started playing around with what you're talking about not knowing what we're seeing, where it falls in the timeline.
Like that nonlinear.
Yeah, there's some real interesting nonlinear storytelling going on in The Limey. Overall, I get why people love it. Some people really love this movie, but for me, it's, I love the theme of it. I really fell in love with, the theme of it watching it again, but not necessarily like the experience of watching it like some of the others. And then I rewatched Haywire because I remember really loving it, and man, this movie is good. That's Gina Carano, of course, who's doing Mandalorian stuff now.
I was going to throw that one out, yeah.
That was pretty fun. I don't remember much, movie. But I do remember it being pretty enjoyable.
And so that was really that stretch where he was like, I think it goes from like Haywire to Side Effects. I think Contagion is right in there. Like that stretch was where I really started to go, oh, this guy. And so that's kind of where, it started developing. And Side Effects is another one. If you haven't seen, I would highly recommend. Another unseen, really fun is an interesting word, but a really good movie. I think we will see, or I think you can see some of the prescience in Side Effects with drug culture. And I mean prescription drug culture that we see with Contagion, now with the pandemic. So I mentioned those. What are some others you guys have seen before I go through the rest of mine? I'd be curious if you had any.
I feel like you've mentioned everything I've seen except for Solaris, which I didn't care for, the remake.
Right.
And the Ocean's 11 sequels, which I think 13 was certainly better than 12, but both are sort of a definite shadow of the original.
I rewatched those earlier this year.
I actually like 12.
12 does some really neat things, but I love the entire bit in 12 where Bruce Willis and Julia Roberts are playing themselves. It's a very fun, very cool idea. It kind of breaks the entire universe of the film, but it's interesting at least.
Yeah. I kind of like the Shays. I don't know if we're counting them because it's not listed as a movie, like made for TV movie, but the Shays with Guillermo del Toro, or Benicio del Toro, forgive me, not Guillermo del Toro. I really like that. I actually haven't seen Magic Mike or Side Effects, but Behind the Candelabra was actually really interesting, and I liked it.
Yeah. Speaking
Also,
about Damon.
I want to shout out The Laundromat, and I want to
Yeah.
shout it out because Gary Oldman and Antonio Banderas make that movie. I think that those two, being who they are, is just so fun. And then, of course, we got to talk about Meryl Streep because there's a twist at the ending of that movie that neither Aaron nor I noticed, and it just is a testament to how good her acting is that we didn't notice.
I think it's great. I think it's a great ending. In fact, that is the reason I come away from that movie. Both the performances and just kind of where it went, just going, oh, I really like that movie. I had it in my honorable mentions as well. So, yeah, the Ocean's movies for me, 12 is probably the more fun movie than 13, but 13 makes more sense to me. I like the plot better in 13. 12 kind of, the way 12 ends, I hated the first time I watched. I was just like, oh, so the entire movie is pointless? Got it. Thanks. Appreciate that. Appreciate you taking me through so much pointlessness. And, anyhow, but that's without giving too much away of what happens in Ocean's 12. So I kind of had to work my way back from hating the movie to going, yeah, but it's still fun to watch. It's still fun to watch these characters and those kind of things.
I think the big takeaway for me is I clearly need to revisit most of his catalog, with the exception of the original film we reviewed tonight, Let Them All Talk. I haven't seen most of his movies in a number of years.
Yeah.
And I got to go back and check some of them. I haven't even seen Ocean's 11 in 6 or 7, so I should go back and revisit.
Yeah, I watched the Ocean's trilogy this summer with my kids, and it was a lot of fun.
How did they enjoy them?
They liked them. Yeah, they enjoyed them. They had a good time.
It's important to me that the next generation enjoys good movies.
Yeah, me too.
And I trust your kids are being brought up right.
I'm trying, man.
In the language of cinema.
And then I would shout out High Flying Bird, which came out last year as well. Some good stuff going on there. And Unsane, I thought, was a nice technical experiment and succeeded as much as I felt like it could. So, yeah. Yep. There you go. Steven Soderbergh films. Those are the best ever, in our opinion. All right, let's finish it up. Let's do our buried treasure for the week. What do you got, Andrew?
I am going to go with the Fresh Prince reunion on HBO.
Nice. I watched that too.
It is way more emotional than what I expected it to be. It's great seeing all the cast and everything, but whenever they do like the James Avery tribute memorial thing, like I got emotional and I teared up. There's the cathartic I guess you could say the reconciliation between Will Smith and the original. I'm gonna look up her names.
Yeah, go for it. No, I'll talk while you do that because I watched this as well, and I really I had heard rumblings that there was some emotion to it, but I wasn't ready for how sincere the whole special felt. And even if you remember Fresh Prince as being kind of the silly, quirky, funny show, which it is, the show itself also was meaningful and emotional and deep. It managed to combine those two things pretty well. And so I shouldn't have been surprised that the special was able to do that too. But yeah, specifically those two things that you mentioned are really big moments in this reunion that kind of give a foundation to even just all the other fun stuff of, doing the Carlton and, DJ Jazzy Jeff getting thrown out of the house and just all the stuff you remember from that show.
I'm glad I looked it up because I almost said Daphne Reed, but she was the second Aunt Vivian. This is Janet Hubert, who was the original one. The cathartic reconciliation between her and Will Smith was very powerful, and honestly, I didn't expect to see that because I'd heard rumblings, about like why she was no longer going to be Aunt Vivian. And, you hear stories, but to actually finally hear the truth told by these two people, it's heartbreaking. And I like that Will Smith was able to say, I was a kid and I was scared of change and I am sorry that this happened to you. Like, him not trying to like tiptoe around and like throw blame on somebody else. Him being able to just say, I'm the one that screwed up, and her being able to forgive him was it felt weird like watching, because I'm like, this is really personal, and I don't know if I should be the third wheel in watching it, but the fact that I was let in, I really appreciate. And like you said, it's great seeing everybody again.
Yeah, and honestly, if you go back and look at some of the things they said about each other over the years, it's pretty intense, and they have been very, very poor to each other, and it's to see two humans who have had that kind of rift sit down together and really try to understand each other is so what we need right now. Like, it's just anything that's about unity and coming together and talking through differences, I'm just going to be a blubbering mess, just because of the divisiveness of social media culture and just our culture in general right now. So I really appreciated it. It's really good. What about you, Jonathan?
I have never seen an episode of Fresh Prince, but
nice.
I feel like maybe I should catch up.
And I will say this. I think you can enjoy this reunion special if you've never seen an episode of Fresh Prince.
That's interesting.
There's stuff in it that there is stuff that depends on nostalgia.
Yeah.
But I think there's like I said, a foundation beyond even just the nostalgia.
No, the way you described it was really like, that sounds nice. I wish I had sort of enough backstory to appreciate it, but maybe I don't need it.
But you've got Will Smith backstory, like him as an actor and as a personality.
I've heard of him. Yeah.
Definitely
say absolutely. I've heard of him.
Jonathan, what's your buried treasure?
This was tricky for me because I haven't left the house or done much in the last month. But my pick for buried treasure is the website nugs.net, which is a music streaming and music downloading site. I am a huge classic rock fan, especially Bruce Springsteen. And every Black Friday, every Thanksgiving, they do a sale. Everything's like half off. And I usually just go through and tick off like a dozen or more albums. Like, I need this, I need this, I need this, I need this. And for the last 2 weeks or so, since Thanksgiving, since I did my annual like buyout of their live music catalog, I've just been listening to a bunch of old Springsteen concerts. And if you're a fan of the Grateful Dead or Pearl Jam or John Fogerty, Robert Plant, Fish is big on this site. They have entire concerts from the heyday of a lot of these bands. Springsteen just released an album from 1975, like the week before Christmas. So this is a 45-year-old show. It sounds brand new. It is fantastic. And they're on sale for like $8 a piece. $4 if you get them on Black Friday.
Nice.
And I loved them. I love them all. And if you're a fan of live music, it is a fantastic place to discover some really cool old gems and full concerts, full shows without any of that like needless editing and compilation work from an entire tour. I like an experience from start to finish, not just what they think is their best work over an entire tour.
Nice.
I would recommend it.
Nugs.net. Very nice. Yeah. I am going to recommend something called The Challenge on MTV. Okay. The new season is back. The Challenge Double Agents has started. I binged the entire library of The Challenge during the pandemic, which is 36 seasons of this reality television show.
What?
And
gravy. I am so jealous of your free time.
That's 535 episodes.
It's work. It's work. That's what I tell myself. So
when did you do this? How?
It's a background show. Like, that's how I binge like a lot of reality TV is. You just have it on in the background while you're working or doing other things, and you pay attention when you need to.
That's great.
Here's what I'll say about The Challenge. If you like Survivor, if you like other reality shows, what this one has different that really appealed to me is a continuing cast. So they cast this show very well and continue characters throughout the season. So in Survivor, you get all new characters every time. Every once in a while, you have an all-star season. This is like an all-star season every season with some newcomers. And it works really well because you get to understand the relationships, things that happened in previous seasons come to affect future seasons.
What is the framework of the challenge? What are they trying to do?
The framework of the challenge is fluid, but it's always a competition. And usually there will be either a team, a duo, or an individual challenge where people will go up against each other. I can give you the framework of this season. They're in teams of 2. And whoever wins the first challenge then gets to select which team to send into the elimination challenge to fight whoever is in the the rest of the house votes in, kind of thing. So it's typical, vote out reality TV kind of stuff, except that in this case, those elimination challenges, you have to win one in order to compete in the final challenge. So you have to go to an elimination challenge and win to be able to compete in the final. So that's kind of a fun, interesting twist.
Do you still watch Survivor every
always,
half year?
Yeah. Always. I watch every season of Survivor. It's one of my favorite shows.
I know that. I wasn't sure if you were still watching it religiously, but good. Yeah. Good for you.
Yeah, so what it's looking like, just from the photos on IMDb, it looks like a combination between Survivor and Fear Factor.
I don't know about the Fear Factor part. The challenges are usually physical, to be honest. It's actually a combination of Survivor and I would say Ultimate Beastmaster or Ninja Warrior or those kind of things. In fact, a lot of the contestants have been pulled from other reality shows. Like Natalie from Survivor, who's one of kind of the most fit survivors who's ever played, is now on the season of the challenge. A lot of the Big Brother contestants have made their way over to the challenge.
I think it's so fascinating that reality TV show contestants have made a bit of a cottage industry out of appearing in other shows.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah,
leverage that 15 minutes. Do it.
It's become a career. Yeah, no doubt. Anyhow, if you have a little bit of a tangent for reality competition, this is definitely one you might want to check out. So you don't need to have watched 36 seasons to enjoy a new season of the challenge. It just helps knowing who these people are and what they've been through before, but they recap that stuff pretty well too, so you can just check it out. There you go. Thank you so much for joining us today for Sif Pop. We did it, guys. We did a podcast thing. Sif Pop is part of the Studio DNA Podcast Network. You can find out more about other shows on the network at studiodna.media or by searching Studio DNA in your podcast player. Huge thanks to Andrew for hanging out today.
Thank you, buddy.
Huge thanks to producer Phil for producing the audio and video show.
Thanks, Phil.
Thanks to Drew for putting together the graphics that you see on the show. Appreciate that as well. And thank you to Jonathan Paula for hanging out again with us today.
You're very welcome.
Send people somewhere. Tell them where to go to check out your stuff.
Pleasure to be here. I'm still sort of in the middle of child rearing, as we may have heard earlier, my daughter trying to put down for a nap. So not a lot going on outside of my professional life, but creatively, you can find me on youtube.com/jogwheel, JOGWHEEL, and on Letterboxd at Jon Paula.
We appreciate you being here again. And we also appreciate our Sif Pop members. Thank you for your support. Starts at $3 a month, and you get access to every single weekly bonus episode, as well as some other fun perks. You can check it out at patreon.com/SifPop. Lots of ways to connect with us. Feel free to email us, feedback@sifpop.com. You can also comment, rate, or leave a review at Apple Podcasts or wherever you do your podcasting. And finally, if you're having a good time, your movie-loving friends will probably like it too, so let them know about it and that listening is much easier than three people all looking through an 8x2 opening. We will be back next week, I think with Ma Rainey from Netflix and another special guest and some other fun stuff. So we'll see you then.
Bye.
Bye, guys. And we got to run. We had a hard out that we missed by 9 minutes. So to all our live viewers, we love you. We appreciate you. But we got to run. Peace out, guys.